Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. I got another Texas update. Joe Rogan speaks on the standoff once again with a gentleman named Colin Noir. I believe that's what his name is. Now, besides that clip, I have about 9 other clips for you guys. So we're going to be touching on New York supporting Texas, ? Because I don't understand how they're not. There is a gentleman that Joe Rogan brings up, and I'm going to be showing you a video about that. It's a gentleman who is threatening a journalist and threatening the entire United States of America. You'll hear that in a few moments. And then we have Biden trying to pass a law. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson says it's a non-starter. Then we have someone from News Nation calling out the mainstream media on some misinformation and kind of stoking the fires for a civil war, which we're going to get into a little conversation about predictive programming. Then we have Rep. Chip Roy, who speaks at a House committee, and he just speaks on the whole thing going on with the southern border. Then we got an update from the Take Back Our Borders convoy, because that is starting to... what is it, the 29th? That actually started just yesterday. Then we have Ted Cruz. He's talking about how Biden has done this deliberately, and he gives a brief little breakdown of that. Then we have Trump and Biden speaking on the new bill that Biden is trying to pass. And Biden says if he gets this bill passed, he'll shut down the border immediately. A lot of people are saying he doesn't need this bill to be passed. We're going to talk about why he might be trying to do that. And then we have Speaker of the House Mike Johnson speaking at the border, because he was just speaking at the border just a few hours ago. So I'm going to be showing you some of that. I know it was a long intro and I apologize. Don't forget about IamCoachColin.com. We got Sold Not For Sale hoodies. We got George Orwell Was Right hoodies. And we have Public Enemy #1. And you know who that is. Discount code is IamCoachColin. All capitals, letters, all one word. 1 L in the name Colin. Let's get it.
Because I like big cities. But for something about New York, I was just kind of like, meh.
Really?
I don't, dude.
That doesn't make any sense, because it's the most city.
I wish I could articulate
just a feeling. It's not interesting.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't even like during a weird time. Like I didn't go like during COVID or anything like that. It was pretty normal time.
During COVID, they made some weird law in New York City where you're allowed to eat outside. Mm-hmm. So they built indoor places outside. So they basically built like these, like there were like little trailers that they set up outside, and they put, dining tables in and nice lighting and shit.
Seen this one?
Yeah, New York City drivers will have to pay $15 to ride through Manhattan. Yeah.
I did not know that.
You have to pay money to drive through the city. Well, first of
this
all,
is new.
Yeah.
Oh.
They're out of money.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what happens when you make stupid policy decisions.
Yeah, you make terrible policy decisions, and you say that you're a sanctuary city, and then Texas goes, okay, great. And they just fucking... It's kind of a gangster move by Abbott.
I mean...
It's pretty gangster. If you're dealing with the border, and the border is where you are, and everyone's like, we are a sanctuary. Like, oh, are you?
Yeah, right.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I got an idea. What is going on? Have you been paying attention to this standoff between Texas and the Biden administration in terms of the border? Like, Texas has put up barbed wire, and the Biden administration wants the barbed wire taken down.
I'll be honest and tell you, I haven't been following it super close, which is odd because I'm Texas born and raised. And the weird thing is living in Dallas, you're almost still kind of disconnected from what's going on at the border a little bit because you're so far north.
Right.
But even in Houston, because I'm in Houston a lot too, it's not something that you're confronted with daily. But anybody from Texas usually at some point in time,
What was that?
Sorry, I was checking a video.
At some point in time, you're gonna go towards the border, and,
Yeah.
and you're gonna see it for yourself. But what I do know of it, I mean, at this point, we're trying not to lose control of it. Essentially, from what I can gather.
What is happening?
I don't know.
Whose idea is it?
In terms of what?
Who's letting this happen? Like, it seems very organized. These people know the border's open, so they know they can just walk through.
I think there's a lot of virtue signaling, I think, involved in all of the whole, like you're talking about with New York saying, we're a sanctuary city. Just, yes, we accept everyone to come in, just not our state in our city. Right. And so I think you have that combined with the reality of what happens when you have a border that honestly is not being checked. Right. So if you have a situation where you have people who are able to just come in and leave as I wouldn't necessarily say leave, but coming into a state, and it's a choke point because a lot of it is coming in through Texas. So it's easy to have that philosophy of leave the border, don't make the border, get rid of the barbed wire, et cetera, because we want to seem as if we are welcoming to everyone. And I don't think it's a matter of not wanting to be welcoming. I think it has a lot to do with the same reason why you have a front door with locks on it on your house.
Yeah.
Right. At least have a checkpoint to say, okay, well, if you want to come in, I need to know who I'm dealing with.
Well, do you see they had this one guy that was on video that he said, "You will see who I am soon," and then they found out he's on like some terrorist watch list or something like that.
Yeah.
Terrific.
But that doesn't surprise me though.
Well, it doesn't surprise me either, but it seems too convenient that it's happening with the numbers that it's happening at. It seems organized, and I would like to know, like, how is it getting to those people? Is anyone supplying them with resources? Is anyone telling them how to do it? Is this organized?
I think it is. Do I have any proof or data to back it up? No, it's a hunch.
Yeah.
Just because it just doesn't really make sense. I don't think anybody who's honestly being honest with themselves. You're not going to be someone who says, you know what, I just want an open border where any and everyone can come in at will without anybody checking who's actually coming into the country.
No, it's insane.
It makes no sense.
It's insane. It's not the case if you fly in, which is nuts. So if like you're coming from some country and you know, if you want to emigrate to the United States, it's hard.
Yeah.
Like you have to prove that you have some sort of exceptional skill. Yep. There's some reason for you to be here. You get a work visa. Yep. You have to apply for citizenship.
I mean, let's just keep it real. Like, there are a lot of people who just don't like this country.
Yeah. And
they would love to get into the country and cause damage to the country any way they can.
Yes.
So I think for anyone to say that they are for open borders,
at least there's got to be a percentage of the people that are coming across that we don't want here. There has to be.
I mean, that's just reality.
Just reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as much as you want to be a kind person, look, I am the grandchild of immigrants. None of my family came from America. They all came from Italy and Ireland. They all came over here.
My parents are immigrants.
Yeah. So it's like we're not anti-immigration, but it just seems like, God damn, you got to make sure you're not letting terrorists in. It seems so simple.
Yeah. But like I said, I think a lot of it has to do. I think there's some grandstanding and there's some virtue signaling going on as well. I think the administration honestly is trying to walk that line of no, we're so progressive, and while at the same time honestly trying to stick it to Texas.
Yeah,
I think. I mean, it's a dick swinging competition at this point.
Why would you have a dick swinging competition about the border? That seems so insane that you would want people to take down a barrier to entry.
You know what I think?
What?
I think it has a lot to do with Trump, because when he was running his campaign, he was running a lot of it based on the idea he was going to build a wall on the border. Yeah. And so that became a separation point for a lot of people in the country with respect to what side they fell on. And I think there's a particular party in this country that utilized it as a lightning rod to create that level of division. And so I think they're kind of trying to reestablish that again.
Which is one of the things that's even more gangster about Abbott sending people to Chicago, sending people to New York. Because in Chicago, they're like, get these fucking people out of here. Right? And the people that live in Chicago, the poor people of Chicago, like, this is bullshit. Yeah. These people are getting money. They're getting all this help. They're getting food. They're getting all this stuff that we don't have.
Yeah, people literally in the place who live there
their whole lives, and then all of a sudden these people sneak in and they're getting this special treatment.
I think.
So we got an ad coming up in 1 second, so I'm just gonna skip over this ad.
There's also a level of,
and then we're gonna get right back to the episode. Oh, there it is. I caught it. Your boy catches the ads right at the perfect time, because you know what, I don't want to hear Rogan talk about AG1. You know what I mean? I'm not drinking anything that's just letters and numbers. Okay, that's the one thing you look out for when you're like eating things. If it says Blue 42 on your cereal, get new cereal. Something says AG1 on it, I'm not drinking it. I'm just not. I mean, I'm sure it's a great product, I'm sure it is, but not for me. Let's get back to the video.
Little bit, or kind of a mass distraction, because when you look at these major cities and you see the conditions that a lot of these people are living in our own country, right? You start to ask yourself, okay, well, why are these conditions? Why do they exist, right? And they're a very particularized area in very particular places within this country. So it begs the question: it's like, why can't we fix this issue?
Right.
Like we're talking about how we want to help these people. They want to come into the country because they're running away from a shitty life and in terrible environments. I mean, you mean the ones that are synonymous to the ones that we actually have in the country as well, but yet we haven't been able to address that issue.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
But I think it's a way to kind of push that to the side and sweep it under the rug and say, no, it's a sexier problem to have when we're trying to deal with people coming from other countries,
right? And
we want to help them because we're so noble and so brave. But I'm like, you haven't even taken care of what's going on in your own home.
And part of the reason why the place they are at sucks. Yeah. Well, the reason why they come over here is because of what we're doing to those countries. Yeah, there's part of that too. I mean, it's part of like when we shipped all those fucking jobs overseas and these people are making pennies on the dollar to make goods that we can buy here slightly cheaper.
Yeah.
I mean, we destroyed unions and destroyed American manufacturing. And
I'm not going to go so far as to say a little bit of that is our fault as well as consumers, because when you do try to make stuff in America, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so and a lot of people aren't willing to pay that price hike in order to have stuff produced in America. So they basically, companies become incentivized to then go and have these things created elsewhere, because I've seen companies where they struggle because they're trying to make everything in America,
Right.
but that comes with a price that a lot of people aren't willing to pay.
Right.
And so I wonder how much, it's kind of like with climate change. It's like how much of that is affecting a lot of the manufacturing and so forth going overseas.
Some of it is, but there's enough people that want to buy American-made products from people that get paid a fair wage that if you advertise that and make that
a lot of people say they do.
Well, a lot of people do. Look at Origin.
Yeah.
Origin can't keep clothes on the shelves. Everything's flying off their boots, their clothes, their hunting gear. They can barely keep them in stock. Everybody wants it because it's 100% American.
You think that's the only reason why?
What do you think it is?
I don't know. I'm not that familiar with Origin, honestly.
Well, Origin is my friend Jocko's company, and I'm a part of it. And I know that what they're doing is very popular.
Gotcha.
And it's very popular because that's part of their mission statement. Bring back American manufacturing. Take pride in the fact that these things that you're wearing, these things that you purchase, these things you use every day is 100% American made. Everything, down to the buttons, the threads, everything put together, all the cloth, everything's sourced from America. 100%. 100%.
That's actually pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, pretty damn impressive. The only thing they don't have from America, there's a part of a boot that you can only get in South America.
Gotcha.
So even that's America. It's just South America, but not United States.
Even that's America. It's just South America. Well, then I guess most things are just American made. If we're going to go there, it was made in Nicaragua. I got this cigar. Is it American? Yeah. It's made in Nicaragua. Here you go. I got this Venezuelan steak made in America. Here you go. What? No, that's not how it works. And that's Rogan's company. When he says, I'm a part of it, what do you think he means? You think he's invested in it? You think he owns? You think I don't get it. He's like, I'm a part of it. So that was like kind of an ad too, right? We just got Truman showed. That's just what happened to all of us just now, which is cool. 100%. I like Jocko and Origin and what they're doing way more than like AG1 or anything like that. Now, let's get into the rest of these clips that we got going. The first thing I will say, though, is this, right? I love Rogan. Look, there's a picture of him right here. I love the guy. Gotta question people, though. Why doesn't he know more about what's going on with the standoff? Because it's historical. It's a historical moment. Here's another thing. Why didn't Jamie look it up? You guys wonder that? That was a little weird. Why didn't Jamie pull up 6 articles about it and break down everything that's going on? Now, I'm not saying one thing or another. Jamie's a part of the CIA. That's fine. CIA, he's a public servant. That's very nice. But I just find it weird. Kidding, of course. I just find it weird that he didn't look it up or even look to Jamie to look it up. Like, hey, what's going on with that? Hey, tell me everything that's happening with that. Something. And for both of them to be in Texas and to be like, what's going on? I don't know what's going on. Like, what? Are you kidding me right now? You have to know what's going on. This is a historical moment. This is like the Alamo all over again. This is a very historical moment, especially depending on what happens, because nobody knows what's going to happen. Texas is standing their ground, and Biden is pushing for them to do what he says, and then also pushing for this law to be passed. If the law doesn't get passed, he's still going to push forward with his federal troops. Texas is still going to stand on what they're doing. They're not going to cut down the barbed wire. What happens? Are they going to attack each other? This is a monumental moment. People are starting to talk about Texas becoming its own country. Now, I talked about it a few days ago in the first video I did about this, but it's becoming a real reality. Now, we're going to move on, though, real quick. What else? Oh, Trump. They brought up Trump. I think that Coley, that black guy. I'm black. I can say it. It's fine. I think the black guy was right. 100% he was right. Because Tim Dillon even talks about it when he's on the podcast. He's like, if Trump said that he's all for Ukraine, the current administration would be like, F Ukraine. No more money for Ukraine. It's almost like anything that he did, they're like, let's do the opposite of that. It's a very, very odd thing. Very, very odd thing. Like, they'll do it to the point of their detriment. And that is what Biden did. And we're going to talk more about that throughout these clips. Now, let's get into this whole thing. Boom. We are going to start with that immigrant that threatened the United States of America, because he really did. And apparently this gentleman, I couldn't find anything on it, but apparently this gentleman actually did pop up on the terrorist watch list. Now, he has been taken in and nobody knows what's happened to him since, but Just listen to what this guy says at the border.
By the way, if you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am. Very easy.
Wow, very easy. The entitlement.
No, believe me, I'm much better than that.
The entitlement, guys.
You
Wow.
will see soon. By the way, if you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am. Very easy.
Wow, very easy.
Man. Pretty wild. Now, I mean, he could have easily been talking about becoming a movie star. I mean, that's probably what it was. He's probably talking about being a YouTuber. He probably has a channel like mine now. And he's like, of course you're going to know who I am. Maybe that's what he meant, right? Doesn't sound like it, though. And again, he did get picked up and he did get put into custody, but nobody knows what's happened to him since. That, my opinion, fully. I'm not saying, not even going with what these guys, these people who were covering the situation. That's a full-blown terrorist. That's me saying it. That's a full-blown terrorist. That was a man that was planning to do an attack. What else could that be seen as? What else could that be thought of as? Now, I have that clip, and we're also going to have Governor Greg Abbott speak on that because it was brought up to his attention. So he speaks on that a little bit. Let's go.
He'd been conducting interviews with migrants who crossed into the U.S. Your reaction to that answer, soon you will know who I am.
So I'm so happy that a video surfaced because there's an argument that we've made at the United States Supreme Court because we have one or two cases in the Supreme Court as we speak right now against the Biden administration about illegal immigration. And as the court weighs and considers our defense against the Biden lawsuit, they have to consider whether or not there is an invasion going on. I have asserted in court that there is an invasion going on in the United States of America, and that videotape typifies why there is such an invasion. That is a threat to the United States of America, what he said, but it's not a one-off threat. We see things like that happen every single day. So, Maria, my hope is that the United States Supreme Court and courts across the country, they see exactly what's happening on our border. It's not what happened under Bush or under Trump or under Obama. This is something completely different that has never happened before in the history of the country. This is an invasion by people we don't know who they are, where they're coming from, or the danger they may pose. And so it's right for Texas to have taken the steps that we have taken to crack down on the illegal crossings, to declare an invasion and use every tool we can to do the job that Biden is not doing, and that's to try to deny illegal entry into our country.
Yeah, and that invasion happened after Joe Biden walked into the Oval Office when he first started his term and started reversing all of President Trump's border security. So, Governor, I ask you, I mean, do you have evidence that in Texas you see things like theft and murder and upset? Do you have evidence that some of that is the result of potential gotaways or potential illegals in your state right now?
So, Maria, just as one example, there was a horrific murder of a young teen cheerleader in a high school a little bit north of where the border area is, and this was a few months back. Maria, things like this happen way too often. And, you know, Fox News has reported multiple crimes by illegal immigrants over the past couple of months. And this is something happening every single day.
Wow.
But what we don't know is the full extent of the terror that has been imported into the country because of all the people who are on the terrorist watch list. We know the record number who've been apprehended, but people on the terrorist watch list, they pay more to not be apprehended. No one knows how many terrorists are in our country because of the open border policies allowed by Biden. One last real quick thing, Maria. People forget how secure our border was. Trump put in place 4 policies that led to a secure border. And when Biden came into office, he eliminated those 4 policies. We can have a president that will impose a secure border.
Yeah, and
I still can't believe there are people, because I see it in the comments. I did a video talking about the good that Trump has done. There are still people who are like, what has he done? What did he do? What did he do? Like, what? Go search, man. Instead of wanting to argue on the internet like you're Ben Shapiro or you're Destiny or you're like some debater of the internet. Go look. He did so much. It's crazy. From policy about the border to energy, it's crazy. It's crazy. And then listen, this is not me like I just learned this. In doing all this, you have this odd education that comes up as you learn things. There's so many world leaders in Europe talking about seeing the greatest foreign policy in the past 50 years from Donald Trump. Like, that blew my mind when I was like, oh, this seems good. But then all of a sudden you hear other world leaders, other people who are presidents and prime ministers going, yeah, that was the greatest foreign policy ever. And when it comes to the border, Biden undid all of it on his first day. His first day he went to work, undoing that stuff because it was racist. Oh, build the wall. That's racist. It's drenched in white supremacy. That's what somebody would say. Let's move on. Oh, real quick, I just want to bring up, I don't understand how New York is not supporting this. New York, Eric Adams is talking about his country, or his state, being destroyed. His city being destroyed. It's terrible. He can't handle it. It's going to ruin the city. That is his exact words. How is he not supporting this? How is he not the first guy on the front lines? How is he not going to Texas and shaking this guy's hand for what he's doing? Because as a sanctuary city, he can't turn people away. They keep trying. But once you're a sanctuary city, like especially New York, I don't know how other people have it set up, but I know for a fact New York has it set up where they cannot, once the buses come, they can't turn those people away. End of story. How is he not shaking this guy's hand? I don't get it. How is he not sending troops, sending money, sending something? It's crazy. I bet there is one thing he's willing to send. Bunch of immigrants. I'll bet you that. All right, let's get on to the next one. It's going to talk about Biden's law a little bit and how Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, says that it's a non-starter. This is a real quick clip.
Right, back and forth. And Jorge, Shelby Park, and Eagle Pass. We've heard a lot about it lately. It's really become a flashpoint for tension. I'm sort of curious of what it's like there on the ground.
So look at this. Standoff still continues between the state of Texas and the federal government. As of right now, federal agents do not have any access inside Shelby Park. It's also controlled by Texas officials. Now, agents still have access to the boat ramp, but it's not just Shelby Park where Texas officials say they are holding the line. Right next to us here, this is International Bridge 2. So we're right next to Shelby Park, and look at these new layers of razor wire, all added by Texas officials.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to join.
Absolutely beautiful. I mean, what are you gonna do? You got to add them, obviously. Really wild. All right, let's jump over here. That's what they're doing. They're adding more razor wire. I'm gonna play another clip for you here. Same news station.
The showdown of political will at the southern border continues. For 3 weeks now, the feds have blocked patrol agents from a park on the Rio Grande River, but the migrant flow continues at that very spot. So it's Shelby Park in Eagle Pass, Texas. You can see the barbed wire there on your screen. Texas officials and other Republican governors say that's necessary, while the Biden administration says take it down. The latest deadline to comply came and went on Friday, with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton saying, quote, "Your request is hereby denied." Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, President Biden is trying to hammer out a deal with lawmakers to address the immigration crisis. The bill lays out sweeping new border controls and would give the president the authority to close the border when it becomes inundated with migrants. News Nation's Jorge Ventura is live in Eagle Pass, Texas, on the U.S.-Mexico border. Jorge, first, can you clear up what's happening on Capitol Hill for our viewers?
Yeah, Elizabeth, so speaking with sources, they're saying that senators right now are near agreement on a new border deal. And there are some interesting new details in this new border deal. I want to start off with the most important. This will actually give President Biden the authority to shut down the border if illegal crossings exceed 5,000 in a single day. Essentially, federal officials will have the ability to suspend asylum processings in between ports of entry. So migrants would have to enter through a legal port. Here's actually a response from the White House on that potential new border deal.
It would also provide a president with a new emergency authority to secure our border when it becomes overwhelmed. And as you heard from the president, he would use that authority if the bipartisan agreement became law.
Now, House Speaker Mike Johnson is calling this bill a non-starter. I actually just got off the phone with Texas Congressman Keith Self, who says he will be voting no on this bill, says it's dead on arrival. Congressman Self telling me, as well as Speaker Mike Johnson alluding to, that President Biden doesn't need congressional action to shut down the border. So time will tell if that will actually get signed. But some interesting details there, Elizabeth. The most important one, that
So, actually, let's hear that detail.
Biden will then have the authority to shut down the border here.
Didn't we just see a president exercising this authority without having to pass this bill? Didn't we just see that? Wasn't he building a wall? Wasn't he doing that? Wasn't he putting things in the works to make Mexico actually pay for it? Wasn't that a thing that was happening? Wasn't the wall getting built? Didn't Biden stop production of building the wall on his first day, along with, I think it's a law called Remain in Mexico. He took that away or something like that. Yeah. Remain in Mexico. He took that away. He caused this whole thing. And now he's saying, if you pass this law, I'll handle it. It's so weird. This is what makes me, this whole fact is what makes me skeptical about this law. I would love to be able to see it and read it and actually see what this is, because it has to be some kind of play for control, because you already have the ability to do this. You already have the ability to not shut down the border, but to stop what's happening. It was already happening. He inherited the lowest illegal immigration rates ever. Not ever. I think it was in 40 years, something like that. 40, maybe 50. He just inherited that. He undid everything. The border's completely open. And now he's saying a law has to be passed in order for him to correct what he did. Why don't you just redo what you undid when you first got into office? I don't know. That to me, that law reeks of some kind of control, because they're saying it's going to, if it exceeds 5,000 a day, but 3,000 a day is probably too much. 2,000 a day. We're talking about illegal. We're not talking about people coming on planes and being like, oh, glad I'm here in America. Oh, let's go. Here's my passport, sir. Oh, I'm quite tired. No, we're not talking about those people. We're talking illegals. 1,000 is too much. 500 is too much. Illegal running across? What? Hey, listen, if it gets to more than 6,000, we'll shut it on down. What are you going to do before then? Oh, well, we're going to greet them. We're going to give them a cell phone. We're going to give them some walking around money. Are you crazy? All right, let's move on. The next one, News Nation. This gentleman actually breaks down something that's going on in the media pretty well, and I link this to something called predictive programming. Now, recently, a movie called Leave the World Behind came out, and we saw what that was all about. And now another movie, I forget what it's called, but it's a Civil War movie. I don't know if it's called Civil War, but both of those movies just reek of predictive programming to me. Usually you can't tell until after the events happen. You see a movie come out after the events, but I'm seeing it right now. And this gentleman illustrates the point so beautifully. Let's go through this.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott and President Biden is at a boiling point, with the words civil war now even being thrown around in the media. Civil war. Whatever you think about exactly what should or shouldn't be done at the border, whatever you think the Texas governor can do or ought to do, we should all expect and demand that states and political leaders follow the law. And that means following court's orders. And we should hold the politicized media accountable when they try to escalate this with mischaracterizations and absurd hyperbole. Now, the conflict in the courts is very real. And yes, there are armed troops and armed agents involved, where the Texas National Guard has seized control of a park in Eagle Pass and federal border agents denied access. Last week, we actually had an editorial ready to go about how the left-leaning media was adding fuel to an already raging fire by claiming that Governor Abbott was defying a Supreme Court ruling, which just wasn't true. And here are just a few of the many examples.
Texas, though,
defying the courts.
Now we go to the southern border where the governor of Texas refuses to give in to federal law.
You're allegedly the party of laws and order, and you're essentially telling local authorities to break the law.
Now, the Supreme Court overturned a lower court ruling that had stopped the federal government from cutting wire erected by the state, which means Border Patrol could continue to remove barriers preventing access to the border. That's it. The court didn't offer any reasoning, didn't prohibit Texas or Governor Abbott from anything. The court just didn't let stand a lower court ruling that stopped the feds from cutting the wire. It's tough to defy a decision that doesn't prevent you from doing anything. So overstating what the Supreme Court did last week is condemnable. But now, and I said that last week we were talking about this, because now we brought it back, because some on the far right have sort of justified those mischaracterizations. Listen to Oklahoma Republican Governor Kevin Stitt on CNN talking about, yes, defying the Supreme Court.
We all agree that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And if the Supreme Court gets something wrong, for example, if they tried to ban and say that we didn't have a Second Amendment right to bear arms, I think the Constitution supersedes somebody in Washington, D.C. telling us, and so I think Governor Abbott did a really good job of laying out and declared an invasion based on Article 1 of the Constitution. The states have a right to defend themselves.
That is the governor of Oklahoma literally saying that he thinks it's okay to ignore a Supreme Court ruling if you think it's wrong. Put aside what the court didn't rule here, because Governor Stitt is saying you can ignore them anyway. That is insane. And by the way, it's making the left-leaning media's point for them, even if it's not for the exact right reason. And by the way, Governor Stitt's not alone. In an interview on CNN Sunday, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem also entertained the idea of Texas literally thumbing its nose at the Supreme Court.
Do you think Texas should do that? Should they defy the Supreme Court?
Texas should stand their ground. They should enforce their state law and go back to the constitutional rights that they've been granted to protect their state sovereignty. And that's what so many of us as governors are offended by, is that Democrats were threatening to encourage the president to activate our guards in order to get them to stand down and not protect our state. So it is a dangerous situation. It is a war zone at our southern border.
Again, putting aside what you think ought to happen, they are acting like these radical constitutional sheriffs who pick and choose which laws they like and which they don't. Governors Noem and Stitt, along with nearly 24 other Republican governors, signed a letter supporting Abbott's stand against President Biden, and some of them, including Ron DeSantis, have sent their own Guard troops to Texas. So both Democrats and Republicans in Congress have escalated the rhetoric to extremes in public statements, while the border bill remains a political football. But if all that wasn't already enough, here is a member of the far right-wing media taking this even further.
I mean, what is this going to turn into a civil war? I mean, you've got the Texas rights versus federal rights, both sides with guns.
And we believe constitutionally we are right. We have a right to defend our citizens.
They're turning this into civil war stuff. That's crazy. But it's not just the right-leaning media talking civil war either.
There is some big Civil War energy coming out of Texas as Greg Abbott taunts the federal government with his actions on the border.
The dangers are extraordinary. Essentially, the language used by the state of Texas echoes the language used by the southern states when they seceded from the Union in 1861. We're going to ignore federal authority. And that's the beginning of the end of the Union as we see it.
So, again, the facts matter. Civil war. Now, all the while, Shelby Park is still under control of the Texas National Guard. It's still true, after all of this, the Supreme Court didn't make a ruling on the underlying question of the authority at the border. So let's allow the lawsuits to work their way through the courts. And there are several.
Yeah, so the whole Civil War thing that's being pushed, that whole narrative, it's very odd because if you watched my previous video, go check it out. About just type in I am Coach Colin, Texas Standoff, you'll see it, or write in Joe Rogan Texas Standoff, and my video will pop up. It's interesting because Abbott has made it clear why he's doing what he's doing. He's not just ignoring the federal government. He's not taunting them. He's not doing anything like that. He has looked into the Constitution, and through what he's found in the Constitution, he can justify this as an invasion. So in that case, he is allowed to do what he has to do to defend the border, to make sure no one else gets through. The fact that they're taking it to this point of he is defying the Supreme Court and this and that, it's very, very interesting. And again, just with those movies coming out back to back pretty much, and then this happening, and then the media going into this weird Project Mockingbird type of thing where they're like, oh, this is civil war. I'm always very wary of people speaking in unison. So every time I see it, I'm a little, not sure about it every single time. So let's keep going here. Let's just move on to the convoy. The convoy has started up. A little bit of update on that. Let's go here.
In just a few hours from now, a convoy of protesters calling themselves God's Army will set off for Louisiana, and it begins day 2 of a planned week-long protest over the Biden administration's border policies. Xavier Walton is in Jacksonville, Florida, with the very latest. Xavier, is this group, up and at 'em for day 2 of traveling now?
Marky, they are up and at 'em. Some people awake this morning, and it is growing as well. This truck actually, just joined in Jacksonville, and the one here to your left, this RV, is the one that is going to be leading the pack, the convoy. This group going to great lengths, driving thousands of miles to highlight the ongoing issue at our southern border. The convoy pulling in late last night, welcomed by dozens of people waving American flags and a band singing the national anthem. One woman even giving the driver of this RV money, gas money. Supporters traveling from places like New Jersey and Missouri, some showing up from Georgia just to be a part of this Take Our Borders Back convoy. As you see them pulling in, it comes as the standoff between Texas and the federal government over border enforcement intensifies. That plus the record number of encounters at the border last fiscal year is why Joseph Fulfer, who is streaming this, is driving across the country.
It's affecting my kids. When I'll have grandkids, and this is costing us billions of dollars. And I've been down there for months, and I can tell you the border is wide open.
After leaving Florida, the convoy, you see it here, heads to Louisiana before making stops along border hotspots in Eagle Pass, Texas, Yuma, Arizona, and San Ysidro, California. And that's where organizers say it's really going to pick up steam. And as I point you over here, it's not just RVs and trucks. It is also normal cars as well. That white vehicle there, a woman, I saw her this morning. She slept in it last night, got a few hours of rest, and she said she's getting ready to start driving again in just a couple of hours, Marky.
A lot of Americans that are devoted to this cause. Xavier Walton will check back in as they get going for day 2. Thanks for watching.
That's wild. Wild that's how it's going down. Man, good. I'm glad that it's working out, and I'm glad. A real question is, how can you be the president and see, or anybody who's in a government position right now that's against what Texas is doing, and then see how many supporters there are? People willing to give gas money, all these things. How can you see that, if you see it, and not realize, oh, well, I guess what we're doing is against what the people want? It's very interesting that almost nothing that the administration and the government at large has done has been in the people's interests. Like nothing. Every time it's like, can we have this? And they're like, you can have this thing instead. Cause, I don't know, this thing made us some money, and we're not going to give you any of that money. It's something that we did amongst ourselves, and now you get this. You get it, okay? This is what you get. Can we have lower gas prices? No, you can't have that. You can have, you want rainbow flags? We have a bunch of rainbow flags. You want gender neutral washrooms? We have those. You want some? You can have some of those. You want some immigrants? We have a bunch. We have there's a whole bus Do you have an extra room? No, man, we don't have extra rooms. What are you guys talking about? All right, let's go on to Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz pretty much is talking about how this is happening deliberately. And I like the way that he breaks it down. I learned some stuff from watching this. Here, let's go.
Child slavery, indentured service. I mean, real world, modern time slavery taking place in the United States and America that we haven't seen since the end of the Civil War. And we have a president of the United States who goes to a Potemkin village visit, and that's it. You have a vice president of the United States who's in charge of it. She could give a damn. What do you make of this? Because it's obviously intentional.
Mark, you're absolutely right. It is a catastrophe on every level. It is a humanitarian disaster. It is a public health disaster. It is a public safety disaster. It's a national security disaster. And you're also right that this is deliberate. This is not caused by the fact that Joe Biden is incompetent, that Alejandro Mayorkas is negligent. This is the deliberate outcome they want. When Joe Biden became president, he inherited the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. And he deliberately broke the system. He opened the border, and the numbers immediately shot up. 9.6 million illegal immigrants have crossed into this country illegally. And you use the word slavery. You're exactly right. That's what it is. You may recall the last time Alejandro Mayorkas testified in front of the Judiciary Committee, where I put up a poster board with a picture of colored wristbands. And I asked him a question. I said, Mr. Secretary, what are these colored wristbands? And you and I are both lawyers. As lawyers, we never ask a question we don't know the answer to. I'll tell you, Mayorkas's answer blew me away. He said, I have no idea what those wristbands are. I've never seen them before. And with complete shock, I said to him, Mr. Secretary, you have just told the American people you are utterly incompetent at your job, and you don't give a damn enough to even pretend. Why? Because just about every illegal alien that crosses this country is wearing one of these colored wristbands. They're color-coded for how many thousands of dollars they owe the cartels. If you stand on the banks of the Rio Grande River, you see hundreds of those wristbands laying in the grass. And what happens? They turn themselves into the Border Patrol, and Joe Biden sends them to every city in America. And the teenage boys, when they get there, they're working for the cartels. They're committing crimes. They're robbing cars. They're robbing houses. They're mugging people because they have to pay back the money. And even worse, Mark, the teenage girls, thousands upon thousands of them get trapped in sex slavery where they have to pay off the cartels, and they can be trapped for years in forced prostitution. These colored wristbands are quite literally modern-day leg irons. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Washington Democrats, they do not care, and they want this to continue.
It is so abhorrent to me what the Democrat Party was and is. And they like to lecture us about civil rights. And they like to lecture us about we conservatives need to be more moderate. And they go on and on and on about this stuff. And yet they continually create these disasters. And this is going on.
Well said. Continue to create these disasters. Now, I didn't know that about the wristbands. That's a very interesting. It just shows how Tim Kennedy touched on this a little bit when he was on Rogan, how tangled up the border situation is with the cartels. Tim Kennedy was talking about being there, and you'll have a bunch of immigrants coming one way, but then you'll have somebody with a package, the cartel, put some stuff on them, whatever it is that they're trying to get across the border, and that person will be over there. And it's almost like these massive amount of immigrants are sometimes acting like decoys in a sense. And it's just this whole thing, and everything is so open that it just happens very flawlessly, like no problem. It's wild. It's wild to think about that the cartel is something that's actually very much, I don't know how to put it, manipulating this or using this situation to their advantage. Now, I can't say anything other than that. There's no cahoots that they could be in that I know of, but I don't know. It's very, very interesting to see how much is at stake when a border is open. Because at first you're just like, oh, people are going to lose jobs. These people are going to come in. Then I started thinking, oh, well, these people are going to be home. Like winter's coming. Like they're going to New York. They're going to Chicago. They don't have a place to stay. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be the worst. You're from Venezuela. You're from Africa. You're from Mexico. you're going to have the worst time of your life. You're not going to be able to survive. And I started thinking about that. Then Tim Dillon brought up, cheap labor. These people are willing to work for cheaper. There's so many different things that this affects, And again, shout out to Poland, how they handled it. The person who was handling Poland's border, I forget what his name was. I think it was the president. He was talking with Tucker Carlson, and he was just straight up. He's like, he was on a news publication. He was like, I don't care if I sound racist. I don't care if I sound xenophobic. He's like, throw whatever slur you want at me. He goes, 0 immigrants equals 0 terror attacks. He's like, and that's all we're concerned about. I was like, whoa. It was amazing. Let's move on to the next clip. We got President Trump commenting on some stuff, and Biden also biting back.
Now, the former president embracing the fallout, really, for his attempts to sabotage the deal.
I noticed a lot of the senators are trying to say respectfully they're blaming it on me. I said, that's okay. Please blame it on me. Please. Because they were getting ready to pass a very bad bill.
But President Biden still urging the bill on, asking Congress to pass the current plan that's on the table, and he'll sign it. Speaker Johnson issued a statement challenging President Biden to issue executive orders on this, saying that the president doesn't need Congress to fix the broken border. President Biden responding to that here in South Carolina.
If that bill were the law today, I'd shut down the border right now and fix it quickly. A bipartisan bill would be good for America, and Congress needs to get it done.
Now, Border Patrol.
I don't trust that at all. Not even slightly. There are people who are more educated than me in the law of what a president needs in order to get this done. The Speaker of the House is like, you don't need this law to get this done. He's like, sign it anyway. Give me this power anyway. I don't know. It looks a little ridiculous to me. I do not trust that at all. Just out of nowhere. It's like, oh, I'll handle it, but just take this bill. This bill is 700 pages, sir. Yeah, don't worry. Signature at the back, put it at the front. We're good. Just make it law for me. I'll shut down the border. When it exceeds 6,000 a day, I'll shut it down. This guy's talking about like a day shift. He's pretty much talking about, when you talk about 5,000, that's the actual number. If it exceeds 5,000, he's going to shut it down. But then what's going to happen the next day? You're going to open it up again. What? It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. We're going to end this little stream of consciousness that I've been throwing at you guys. I know it's been a while. We're going to end this with Mike Johnson just talking about this whole situation. He's the Speaker of the House, and here we go.
We would describe it as both heartbreaking and infuriating. Our communities are overrun. We have local resources that are being strapped. We have lethal drugs that are pouring into our country at record levels. And it's in less than 3 years that President Biden took office that this has happened. That we have over 7 million illegal encounters at the border, nearly 2 million known gotaways, and that doesn't count the many that are undetected. At 312 suspects on the terrorist watch list that have been apprehended. We have no idea how many terrorists have come into the country and set up terrorism cells across the nation. Last month alone, we saw the most illegal crossings in recorded history. It is an unmitigated disaster, a catastrophe. And what's more tragic is that it's a disaster of the president's own design. About an hour ago, we had lunch, and there are a number of sheriffs that work and serve here along the border of Texas. The sheriff of Terrell County was one of them. He's a former Border Patrol agent for 26 years, and he said in his estimation, it took less than 6 months for the Biden administration to dismantle 100 years of progress that the U.S. Border Patrol had achieved. Some of the first actions that Joe Biden took when he rolled into the Oval Office were that he rolled back border security measures. They were put in place by the Trump administration. We all saw it happen. Remember, it was on his very first day in office that President Biden stopped construction of the southern border wall, and he ended the Remain in Mexico policy. It was estimated on our tour just a moment ago that if the Biden administration would reinstate just the Remain in Mexico policy, it could stem the flow by probably 70% or more. But he refuses to do it. And since the time that President Biden took office, the administration has done next to nothing to protect the border. But we've all seen with our own eyes, they have opened the border wide to the entire world. It's estimated that nearly 170 countries have people coming in and flowing across this border. And some of these are from nations that have high numbers of concentration. And these are not people who are fleeing and looking for asylum, that are in fear for their lives in their home countries. We have hardened criminals coming across that border. They're the ones being released from prisons from some of these countries and sent here to come into the U.S. Rather than incentivizing people to come, the president needs to deter people from entering the country. Rather than discussing amnesty with Mexico, as top Biden administration officials did within the last couple of weeks, this administration should reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, as was said. Rather than expanding parole authority to an unprecedented scale, the president should obviously end catch and release and stop the abuse of our parole and asylum systems.
I will end with this. We are past the point of asking the questions that Rogan's been asking. Is this engineered? Is this intentional? What's going on? There is no question that this is engineered. There is no question that this is intentional. There can't be a question of this anymore. There just can't be. Texas puts something together where it actually stops people from flowing in through the southern border. And the first thing that Biden wants is a law that will give him more power over the border and probably over what Texas is and isn't allowed to do. And he wants what they've done to stop the flow. He wants that undone. And he wants the flow back open. There is no more questions about who is behind this and if it's intentional. It clearly is, and we can clearly see who it is that wants this. That's it. That's it. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. It helps the channel tremendously. You have no idea. And other than that, I'm out.